In ancient history, Rome is known as one of the most successful and famous empires in the world, and it's renowned for its quick rise and fall. Rome's advancement in technology, military, agriculture, and in government are just a few of the reasons Rome rose to such great heights. And while Rome rose quickly, its inevitable downfall followed shortly behind. For my first artifact, I chose advanced technologies. Advanced technologies, which were inspired and created from cultural diffusion, were a major part of Rome's quick rise, becoming one of the largest growing empires in history. Some of Rome's most famous technological advances were the aqueduct, paved roads, bathhouses, advanced irrigation systems, the first newspaper, arches, air conditioning, surgical tools, a new calendar system, and even postal services. Rome's advances in technology provided a high quality of life for citizens who lived in Rome and had access to these accommodations. This is a major part of the rise of Rome because citizens who lived in Rome were extremely happy with their quality of life. With happy citizens, Rome had no fears to be challenged by the civilians and could continue to expand their empire. For my second artifact, I chose Rome's massive militia. Rome's military was skilled in many different tactics, such as the turtle method, where Romans would use their shields to surround them and protect them from attackers in the shape of a turtle shell. Rome's large military was divided into two sections, the larger section being the legions and the smaller section being the centuries. Legions consisted of infantry soldiers, or soldiers that fought on land, and cavalry soldiers who rode on horses. Rome's use of splitting up their military caused less deaths and higher morale because they would be sending out smaller units at a time and could vary on which groups to send and where to send them. Soldiers in Rome would even have to wear around 200 pounds of armor. Ultimately, Rome's use of strong military tactics allowed them to expand and grow their empire. For my third artifact, I chose the Roman Republic. Rome had introduced a new way of running a government. Rome ran a government called a republic, which was extremely different than what we had seen before in this time period. For Rome had many aspects of Greek life, one major difference between the two civilizations was the role of government. A republic was neither a monarchy nor a direct democracy, like we had seen in Greece, and was ultimately run by the Senate, which was made up of the highest class of individuals called the patricians. At the beginning of the growth of the empire, patricians held all social and governmental power. However, with the growth of the empire, Rome had allowed the lower class, the plebeians, to also serve in the government. The plebeians who served in the government were called the tribunes. This created a happy median between the two social classes, and all of the negotiating was done without using war. Rome's ability to compromise on the way their government was run was an extremely new concept for this time period and was a landmark in ancient history. Rome was able to continue to rule their empire while also keeping both high and low social classes happy. For my fourth artifact, I chose Rome's agriculture and fertile lands. Rome is located on a peninsula in Italy, meaning it's surrounded by water on 3 of its 4 sides. This proves to be a major advancement in history, for Rome had easy access to bodies of water for travel, trade, and irrigation systems. Rome had major bodies of water in which provided a hefty water source. These waters were the Tiber River and the Mediterranean Sea. Being surrounded by water gave Rome extremely fertile soil, which provided great crops which could last them a long time. One of Rome's most fertile crops was grain, which was widely traded and spread around the world. Growing crops also gave Rome the ability to trade with neighboring countries and civilizations. Fertile lands in agriculture were achieved by the use of advanced technologies, as mentioned in Artifact 1. Technologies such as aqueducts and advanced irrigation systems made Rome a hotspot for trading crops. Rome's fertile lands provided them with many crops to trade and feed their community with, which helped expand the reach of the Roman Empire. For my fifth and final artifact for the rise of Rome, I chose Rome's extensive trade network. Rome was surrounded by many different cultures. Some of these cultures include the Latins, the Greeks, and the Etruscans. Greece was south of Italy, while the Etruscans were located to the north. Trading helped spread cultural diffusion, and some of Rome's most famous technologies were based off ideas from other cultures. Even Rome's writing system was culturally diffused from the Etruscans. Trade also helped Rome gain allies and enemies, which influenced the conquering of land, Because Rome was so close to so many other civilizations, war was bound to break out, and the spread of trade could be a main reason for that. While hearing the word war may seem like a bad thing, it was actually the way Rome expanded their empire. Without the use of Rome's extensive trade system, its expansions would have come much slower and would have almost inhibited its ultimate rise to fame. For my sixth artifact, and also the first artifact for the fall of Rome, I choose the fall of the Roman Republic and rise of the empire. While Rome expanded mostly under the rule of its empire, it also caused many internal and external conflicts in the civilization. Rome's republic helped the civilization ultimately flourish, even while yielding some internal conflicts. The use of a single ruler, an emperor, was one of the main things Rome was trying to avoid in the beginning of creating their society. When the Roman Empire began to form, it was contradicting everything Rome had said they did not want in the beginning of their civilization. I think the use of a single leader in Rome was one of their main downfalls because they put all of their faith in an emperor and the lineage that emperor would lead off with. I think Rome would have continued to flourish if the citizens were able to pick and elect Senate members and tribunes as seen in the Roman Republic, rather than hoping the emperor's lineage would continue to successfully rule the empire. For my seventh artifact, I chose the fine line between the plebeians and the patricians. This was one of the biggest divisions within Roman society. The patricians were a small elite group of wealthy landowners who monopolized the government, while the plebeians were the majority of Rome's population and held jobs such as merchants, farmers, and artisans. While the compromising of the tribunes between the two social classes, war was bound to break out. The monopolization of the patrician class made the plebeians demand to have more power in the government. The plebeians began to fight over their rights, and this struggle would be called the conflict of orders. The plebeians would go on strike in exchange for their rights. They would leave the city, they would refuse to work, or even refuse to serve in Rome's military. The fight between the plebeians and the patricians would soon settle down, but not without a cost. Rome had a small decline during the period of the conflict of orders. Ultimately, the fine line between the two social classes would lead to inner conflict and other internal problems within the empire. For my eighth artifact, I chose slavery. While the size and amount of land seized in the Roman Empire grew, so did their population. After the switch to their empire, Rome had chosen to abandon the concept of having captured and conquered lands people join the Roman civilization in exchange for serving time in the army. Rome had chosen to take their captives as slaves and have them work for the Roman government as farmers. This is a downfall because it put most farmers out of a job completely and upset the lower class. After only a couple years of having this rule implemented in society, slavery had made up a whopping 1/3% of the entire population of Rome. The addition of slavery to the Roman Empire left many plebeians jobless and angry. The addition of slavery also began to corrupt the patricians and the military leaders, which will be mentioned in Artifact 9. Overall, the addition of slavery hurt Rome more than it helped. For my ninth artifact, I chose the fact that Rome became too powerful and land-hungry. While Rome's constant need for expansion made the empire reach its massive size, it also came with many consequences. For one, Rome's military leaders became so thirsty for land, they became corrupt. These leaders would go to any extremity to conquer land, even if it meant they would have to play dirty. The military generals are one of the main causes slavery became so prevalent in the Roman Empire. Because they expanded so much in so little time, there seemed to be less and less room for new citizens. One of the generals that captured the first slaves was named Scipio, and he conquered Carthage and took its citizens as slaves. Generals in the military were also the ones who put farmers out of a job. Because of the employment of so many slaves, as mentioned in Artifact 8, farmers were out of a job and were forced to join the army in order to provide for themselves and their family. Corrupt military leaders and the manipulation of jobless citizens were products of Rome becoming too consumed with conquering lands. For my final artifact, I chose the rise of the barbarians and internal conflicts. While Rome had been internally struggling for many years, mostly due to civil wars between the conquered lands and the social classes, its demise ultimately falls into the hands of foreign attackers. Rome's defense system was not prepared for the migration of barbarians nor the amount of people who would try to conquer the Roman Empire. Barbarian migrations stemming from the northern German area invaded Italy and the Roman Empire and conquered it. Thus, the Roman Empire had finally come to a fall after many, many years. While many factors influenced the decline of Rome, such as being greedy for land, initiating slavery, changing from a republic to empire, and the conflicts between the two social classes, Rome ultimately fell to outside and external attacks, even though it had been falling apart internally for decades.